study if you and secret one similar about kind of engineering and you don't know, honestly.
I hate to interrupt, but I do need to get us started. We have only a limited number of minutes, and it's important that we stay right on schedule so that you all have enough time to be speaking together during the table talk part of this. First of all, welcome. My name is Warren Christina. I'm the Dean of the Honors College here, and with my colleague, Daniel Siebold, who is the Dean of College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, we put together this program because we thought it would be interesting, exciting, to begin to think about Hofstra's future outside the context of that traditional struggle that you sometimes hear between professional training on the one hand and liberal arts on the other. The whole point of this is to bring in some expertise to help us think outside that structure and begin to think constructively together about Hofstra's future. Now, we put this together before we knew that President Poser was going to initiate a year-long conversation about Hofstra's future. So I feel like this is just a little bit of serendipity, and it's like we get to launch the conversation. I want to thank all of the faculty facilitators. There are 20 of them here, 2 at each table. I'm not going to read all the names, we'd be here too long. But thank them for taking the time to be with us. Their jobs are very specific. They will initiate the conversation and take notes. And the objective with those notes is to collect them, edit them, put them into a package, and then share them with other faculty, deans, provosts, the provost, and the president herself. So all of this is going to lead to something for you. So I am very grateful that you've taken the time to join us and to be part of this conversation. I do want to take a moment to make just 1 or 2 introductions. I just lost her provost. Oh, there is the current provost, Janet Lenahan. Thank you for coming out today. And over to the side is President Poser. Thank you for being with us today. And let me take a moment now to introduce the first of our 2 speakers. And for that, I do need glasses. Okay, our first speaker, who we are very excited to have with us. Her name is Dr. Lynn Pascarella. She is currently the president of the American Association of Colleges and Universities, whose mission is to advance the vitality and public standing of liberal education in service to democracy. Founded in 1915, AAC&U now comprises over 1,200 member institutions, including accredited public and private colleges, community colleges, research universities, and comprehensive universities of every type. Hofstra, of course, is a proud member of AAC&U. Dr. Pascarella is herself a graduate of Quinnipiac Valley Community College, Mount Holyoke College, and Brown University. She joined the faculty of the Department of Philosophy at the University of Rhode Island in 1985, rose to the position of Vice Provost for Research, Vice Provost for Academic Affairs, and Dean of the Graduate School. In 2008, she was named Provost at the University of Hartford. In 2010, she was appointed as the 18th President of Mount Holyoke College. Her tenure as President at AAC&U began in 2016. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Pascarella.
Thank you so much. It is such an honor and privilege to be with you here today to celebrate the inauguration of Dr. Poser as Hofstra's 9th president. And I'm grateful to Dean Christina and Dean Siebold for their kind invitation and their gracious hospitality, and to Athaline Collins for her help in arranging the logistics for this visit. A month after the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a global pandemic, AAC&U released a new vision for educational excellence entitled What Liberal Education Looks Like. Designed to guide higher education at this time of unparalleled transformation, it's a vision that details the ongoing dynamism and enduring relevance of liberal education as essential for positioning students for success in work, citizenship, and life in a world that none of us can fully predict. The strategic plan aimed at achieving this vision is centered on restoring public trust in the promise of liberal education and inclusive excellence, seeking to create an ascendant narrative that contests accusations of irrelevancy and illegitimacy leveled against higher education in general and liberal education in particular. With public confidence in the academy in rapid decline, it serves as a collective call to action to make visible the transformative power of colleges and universities. And for those of us who believe that higher education is inextricably linked to our nation's historic mission of educating for democracy, the work is more urgent than ever. When this vision was first unveiled, no one could have anticipated that the world as we know it would be upended, that COVID-19, social distancing, shelter in place, Zoom bombing, and local and national lockdowns would become part of the daily lexicon, or that a global pandemic would spur an economic recession accompanied by a moment of racial reckoning, fueling even greater uncertainty. Colleges and universities across the country demonstrated remarkable resilience in the pivot to remote and online learning. Yet, in the process, food and shelter insecurities experienced by students at all types of institutions were unveiled alongside the expansiveness of the digital divide, foregrounding higher education's most serious challenge, namely a growing racial and economic segregation. Short-term tactics to redress lost revenue included faculty and staff furloughs, travel bans, hiring freezes, and in some cases, the excising of arts and humanities programs in favor of vocational and pre-professional programs seen as more marketable to prospective students and their parents. Such moves and the reasoning behind them position the arts and humanities as a self-indulgent luxury reserved for those within the ivory tower, seen as a willful disconnect from the practical matters of everyday life. Even before COVID-19, a prevailing national rhetoric had emerged in which talk of investing in society through education had been replaced by talk of return on investment, tuition in exchange for jobs. This reduction of the American dream solely to prosperity, as disconnected from the values of democracy and freedom, has encouraged the abandonment of the notion of higher education as a public good, positioning it instead as a private commodity. Now, legislative proposals aimed at tying public funding for colleges and universities to job prospects for graduates, or limiting scholarship funds for those who major in disciplines deemed immediately employable, threaten to reduce higher education and higher learning to higher training. The consumerist mantra at the basis of these proposals is predicated on a cost-benefit analysis for students and families that focuses on investment in college versus the short-term economic payoff of a degree or credential. Equally troubling is the perceived disconnect among college-going students between the education they receive and the relevance to their professional lives. A 2018 study released by Strata and Gallup revealed that 58% of college students said that jobs or career-related motivations were their main reason for attending college. Yet only 1 in 4 U.S. adults with college experience strongly agrees that their education is relevant to their work and daily life. Another study found that while 53% of students believed their major would lead to a good job, just 34% believed they'd graduate with the skills and knowledge needed to be successful in the job market. A recent report by Handshake confirms that too often students don't see the value in the way colleges prepare them to enter a career, despite this being the main reason they attend higher education in the first place. Far more needs to be done to make the outcomes of a college education better understood by the public, including students and employers, addressing their concerns that higher education is too expensive, too difficult to access, and doesn't teach people 21st century skills. Today, the alignment of educational outcomes with workforce needs plays an essential role in promoting both socioeconomic mobility and national economic growth and competitiveness. Achieving and sustaining this alignment requires ongoing dialogue between educators and employers about what constitutes workforce preparedness. Collaboration across stakeholders and bridging diverse perspectives are the keys for unlocking the potential of our economy and modeling our own democratic resilience. The fact that in a global knowledge economy, employers demand graduates with a liberal education was validated by AAC&U's most recent round of employer research, How Colleges Contribute to Workforce Success. Among the key findings are that employer confidence in higher education and the value of a college degree remains relatively high. 67% of employers had a great deal of confidence or quite a lot of confidence in higher education. And 87% believe that getting a college degree or credential is definitely or probably worth the investment of time and money. Moreover, employers regard a liberal education as providing the knowledge and skills necessary for long-term career success in the 21st century. 9 in 10 employers believe that it's important to achieve the learning outcomes that define a contemporary liberal education, and they urge new efforts to help students achieve them. The highest rated outcomes employers are seeking are the ability to work in teams, think critically, analyze and interpret data, apply knowledge in real-world settings, and possess digital literacy. AAC&U's research also shows that employers value participation in certain active and applied educational experiences. More than 4 in 5 employers say they would either be somewhat more likely or much more likely to consider hiring recent college graduates if they had completed active and applied experiences in college, such as internships, apprenticeships, community-based learning, or study abroad. Still, while 9 in 10 employers, 87%, report that they are at least somewhat satisfied with the ability of recent college graduates to apply the skills and knowledge learned in college to complex problems in the workplace, just under half, 49%, are very satisfied. Further, just 6 in 10 employers believe that college graduates possess the knowledge and skills they needed to succeed in entry-level positions, and just over half, 55%, said they believe they possess the knowledge and skills required for advancement and promotion. So while employers value liberally educated graduates, the actual experience with job applicants and new hires has shown that not all recent graduates have acquired the knowledge, skills, and competencies foundational to a liberal education. Collectively, these findings demonstrate that employers from a wide range of backgrounds and industries seek liberally educated employees with a particular type of post-secondary education, one in which students engage in forms of inquiry that train the intellect through a focus on real-world problems that draw the learner into relationship with others. These findings also reinforce AAC&U's vision for a liberal education for the 21st century, one that mandates the acceleration of integrative, high-impact learning opportunities to engage every student in solving unscripted problems, authentic problems across all types of institutions within the context of the workforce, not apart from it. It is a vision in which assignments across the curriculum make clear the relationships among various areas of knowledge, transcending disciplinary silos, requiring the development of a deeper level understanding across subject areas, connecting knowledge to experience, and adopting a holistic approach to evidence-based problem solving that incorporates diverse, sometimes contradictory points of view, facilitating an understanding of how one's place in the world both informs and limits one's knowledge. Nowhere has the necessity for these skills been more evident than in response to the global pandemic. Despite the extraordinary advances that have been made in science over the centuries, appealing to technology alone is futile when it comes to grappling with the most fundamental questions of human existence, rendered unavoidable by COVID-19. Questions include how society should allocate scarce medical resources, whether individualism can be excessive in matters of life and death, and how we can balance the values of pluralism and tolerance on the one hand against principles of fairness to all on the other. And in this age of increasing polarization and partisanship, alongside post-truth rhetoric, advancing liberal education, unleashing the potential of those otherwise most likely to be excluded from full participation in civic and economic life is more critical than ever. If colleges and universities are to develop the independent and critical thinkers necessary to ensure that democracy is more than a tyranny of numbers, we must expand our reach using whatever vectors are available to us to collectively reaffirm the role that a liberal education plays in discerning the truth, the ways in which it serves as a catalyst for interrogating the sources of narratives, including history, evidence, and facts, the ways in which a liberal education promotes an understanding that the world is a collection of interdependent yet inequitable systems, the ways in which it expands knowledge of human interactions, privilege, and stratification, and the ways in which higher education fosters equity and justice locally and globally. Yet this will require interrogating how our current systems and structures mitigate against these objectives. In designing a college or university from scratch, I would focus on eliminating barriers to integrative problem-based learning and transition away from an expert model in which students are passive recipients of knowledge to one in which liberal learners actively engage with knowledge, participating in its creation and expansion. The end would be to empower students to appropriate the knowledge and skills represented by essential learning outcomes, to make them their own. The institution would embrace a paradigm shift from ranking and sorting students to ensuring that all students benefit from the most powerful forms of learning, understanding that student success depends not on the college readiness of individual students, but on the readiness of the institution to welcome and support all students and to respond to the changing needs of an increasingly diverse society. Inclusive excellence as a process has evolved from and builds upon the earlier shift from instruction to learning and emphasizes faculty-driven innovation related to active and applied forms of problem-centered, inquiry-based learning, and the exploration of a significant problem that is defined personally by each student. This type of signature work centers on student initiatives, interests, and insights, encompassing cumulative learning and high-impact practices. Reconceived as a process rather than an outcome, excellence in higher education entails providing students with regular opportunities to demonstrate achievement in a range of knowledge and skills across their educational experiences and pathways, and assessed in ways that promote continuous improvement. Assignments would be transparent, making clear the learning objectives, and be scaffolded in a way that moves toward engaging students in increasingly complex work. And assessments would be grounded in a demonstration of proficiencies regarding complex, interrelated problems that draw upon multiple disciplinary and experiential lenses while evaluating dimensions of students' formation as global citizens and problem solvers. For far too long, educators have asked students to answer questions for which we already know the answers, when we should be preparing students to address the unscripted problems of the future. Confronting the inadequacies of standardized tests and grades, developing more equitable forms of assessment, expanding the cognitive bandwidth of students, instilling a sense of welcome and belonging, and encouraging a growth mindset by offering opportunities for continuous improvement that can promote intellectual risk-taking would be paramount. In addition, the college would be committed to serving as an anchor institution, demonstrating that its success is inextricably linked to the psychological, social, economic, educational well-being of the community in which it is located and those they seek to serve. Active engagement with diverse individuals around real-world challenges and taking advantage of local epistemologies is essential for expanding pathways for students and fostering individual thriving. Unfortunately, we're at a point in our history when the professional structures of the academy, with its tendency to neglect teaching excellence, outreach, civic engagement, and public intellectualism, are alienated from a more widespread humanistic comportment to life, and thus from the very purposes of a liberal education. Until we change both the curricula and reward systems within the academy, structural impediments will continue to marginalize the critical work of those dedicated to providing the broadest access to higher education through humanistic practice that reaches beyond the gates. Such activities should be measured in humanistic terms, not by eliminating scholarship, but by broadening what we value as an expression of that mastery. And so I would work with disciplinary societies to actively reconsider pathways to recruitment, retention, tenure, and promotion, placing scholarship into reasonable balance with humanistic modes of activity in the classroom and beyond. By focusing on forms of inquiry that promote active engagement with real-world problems within diverse communities, by redefining excellence as an inclusive process rather than an exclusive outcome, by emphasizing discovery and innovation through the integration of STEM disciplines with the arts, humanities, and social sciences to apply to progressively complex problems, we can begin to address the equity mandate before us. Our shared roles as leaders in higher education is to reduce systemic barriers and create reward systems within our own institutions for advancing this type of learning. To prepare students for careers in the 21st century, colleges and universities must first equip students to name and reflect upon the skills that matter. Second, make mindsets and aptitudes an explicit part of learning inside and outside of the classroom to help students better understand what they can contribute as professionals. Third, assess skills and mindsets at the beginning, middle, and end of the college journey to ensure that college graduates are prepared to succeed and to advance. Fourth, ensure high-impact learning experiences can be equitably accessed by all students from all backgrounds, and that students are supported to succeed in these experiences. Fifth, give students a way to tell employers their story through e-portfolios, which provide a space for students to reflect on their learning, connect outcomes to selected work samples, showcase their experiences, and curate all of this into a professional portfolio they can use on the job market. Sixth, make career readiness a core component of the college experience and offer a subscription model to alumni to return and earn badges, certificates, and degrees for career advancement. Seventh, leverage general education to reinforce why breadth and depth of learning matter, from cornerstone to capstone, understanding that the skills employers most value are not developed within a single course or even within a single major. Ultimately, the goals and effects of embedding career preparedness into the liberal education core must be reciprocal. On the one hand, the move should ensure the curriculum is not narrowly focused, either on immediate post-graduation outcomes or on too narrow a set of skills as marketable or directly related to employment or job prep, but rather help students understand how the fullness of their college experience prepares them for long-term career success. On the other hand, it should render visible for students that what they are gaining from their experiences can be applied to the world of work, and how. By integrating liberal education and career preparedness, we can fulfill the promise of American higher education, reestablishing it as foundational to the American dream. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will introduce our second speaker now. Colin Kaprowski serves as a managing director within EAB, an organization whose mission is to make education smarter and our community stronger. Mr. Kaprowski leads a strategic research division overseeing research and services spanning academic affairs, enrollment strategy, student success, and strategic planning. Hofstra is an institutional partner with EAB. The most visible sign of our partnership is the recently implemented Navigate program that is improving student-faculty communication while providing us with a much clearer understanding of student achievement patterns. Mr. Kaprosky joined PAP in 2010. He's one of the firm's leading experts and thought leaders on the trends, challenges, and opportunities shaping the higher education landscape. He is often called upon by PAP member institutions to present to cabinets, boards, faculty senates, and academic leaders. Mr. Kaprosky earned bachelor's degrees in music performance and political science at the University of Southern California, graduating as class valedictorian. He also holds an MPhil in political theory from Oxford University, where he was a Marshall Scholar. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Kaprosky.
I hope you'll allow me the use of PowerPoint, which I know everyone loves in higher education. I'm very excited to be here. I want to thank everyone in Hofstra for inviting me. I have far fewer accolades than Dr. Pasquarello, so you may be wondering why I'm here. I have not been a college president, but hopefully I can bring some comments from a couple of lenses that I do have. One is that I was a liberal arts student myself. I was a jazz studies major, blossomed into a philosophy graduate student. Obviously, I wanted to make a lot of money. But I am gainfully employed now, so I can be an example of somebody who has explored quite a bit in the humanities, liberal arts, and found life with those skills and after those skills to some extent. I also am an employer. I'm somebody who interviews recent college graduates, often with a variety of backgrounds, and I have some opinions about the kinds of things we look for. But third, I have spent quite a bit of time considering this question, the so-called either-or debate between traditional academic and humanistic education and pre-professional or purely vocational technical education, on the other hand. I've titled this Designing a Both-and College Experience because everyone seems to agree that we shouldn't have to choose. Most studies of 17 or 18-year-olds will say that something like 94 or 95% want to get a good job after college, but 94 or 95% also want to learn things and meet other people, debate ideas. They are purchasing, or the government is subsidizing, both of those value propositions. So I think that it's incumbent upon us to figure out how to deliver on both of those, instead of endlessly debating which one we must be forced to choose. I wanted to start with just the acknowledgement that you can probably find hundreds of articles or books asking the question you'll see on this slide. This is a 2013 Newsweek cover story by Megan McArdle asking, is college a lousy investment? There are lots of surveys, studies that look at this, that look at the return on investment, or more broadly, the return on education. We do know that if you complete a bachelor's degree, you will likely earn at least $1 million more in terms of total salary of your lifetime compared to if you don't hold a bachelor's degree. And there are even more premiums depending on what you might major in. But often in the wake of a recession, in the 70s with the oil crisis, in 2007, 2008, and then over the last couple of years, you will see a lot of articles like this, questioning not only the humanistic tradition, but is it really worth it to spend those 3, 4, 5, 6, however many years you might spend at college pursuing a degree? I want to linger a bit on the notion that this is a stale debate, and actually the description of this session called it stale, right? This either-or debate, and unpack why do we feel that it is so stale. The first reason is it actually is quite literally stale. You can pick your favorite Greek philosopher, and you will find kind of very energized consideration of what the point of education is. We keep having this debate. It doesn't seem to evolve very easily. And that's because it's often a proxy for another debate that Dr. Pasquarello mentioned, which is higher education a public or a private good? I don't think we'll settle that today. It's a very complex and challenging debate that gets into the question of what should taxpayers pay for? What aspects of the college degree ought to be subsidized? When we engage this debate, we have to engage the American public who votes, the majority of whom do not hold a 4-year bachelor's degree. Only 40 or 42% of Americans hold a bachelor's degree. So our ability to articulate why their scarce tax dollars should subsidize whatever it is we're doing in higher education is incredibly important. Third, Dr. Pasquarello mentioned many of the skills that employers claim to be looking for. Critical thinking, public speaking, leadership, followership, ability to work on teams effectively, and so on. They don't seem to radically change the things at least we think we're doing in higher education right now. They don't seem to change very quickly, so that allows us to feel like we can rest on our laurels a little bit. When new skills do pop up, like you have to figure out how to work Zoom, you have to figure out how to log into Slack, whatever it might be, they seem so narrow and technical that it's not worth reconsidering the fundamentals of our core curriculum. And so often we dismiss the idea that in addition to the course on Western analytical thought, you need to take an Excel module or figure out how to use Microsoft Outlook. And so we kind of conclude that the critics just don't get it, or in fact our own students don't get it when they graduate with a degree in philosophy or religion or something that's less applied. Somehow they're not able to articulate to employers not just the name of the degree or the focus or their GPA or whether they graduated with Latin honors, but what they can do for the employer, the skills they have, the competencies they have. So I want to not straw man, but steel man the critics' argument a little bit here, and at least challenge us to consider that maybe what we're doing isn't already perfect. What we're doing isn't already the ideal both and college experience, that we might improve upon what we do and challenge ourselves to better prepare students for the workforce. I'm going to throw out a couple of other ideas just to frame this. One uses this kind of metaphor or analogy to a Greek philosopher's quote about a fox and a hedgehog. A fox is said to know many things, but a hedgehog knows one thing very deeply. And this seems to be another choice about your curriculum and what you study in college. Do you want to focus very narrowly? Do you want to know a little bit about what? When we look at salary and the kind of time that you spend in your career, there are a couple of trajectories, and these are stereotypical, that you often hear about in commentary about this question. One is this trajectory here on the bottom, so the notion of a graduate with a liberal arts degree that's less applied, might need to move back into mom and dad's house, might need an internship or two, might need an early career MBA. The notion is, and I think Dr. Pasquarello's research has shown some of this, that often graduates with this kind of background tend to catch up in terms of salary later on in their careers, but increasingly they're struggling to launch in their early 20s. So maybe we might be able to better prepare them. Less talked about are graduates with high demand technical skills. So at least when we're not in an oil crisis, if you were a parent just wanting to force your kids to make as much money as possible, you should only have one program on campus, and that's petroleum engineering, right? But if everyone was a petroleum engineer, supply and demand kicks in, there's no scarcity of talent, suddenly there wouldn't be a salary premium. And what happens when Elon Musk wins and suddenly we're not reliant on petrol anymore, right? So there's this notion that even somebody who has the hottest coding language or software development skill or technical engineering proficiency that can get a job immediately, can you put them in front of teams or clients? Will they develop the next great technology? Can they be a leader? Can they be dynamic and flexible over time? And that's a wholly separate question from the technical depth. So this is one of my favorite quotes from Phil Gardner at Michigan State, who studies kind of post-graduation outcomes. There are really only two choices for graduates who want a lot of employment options today: to be a technically savvy liberal arts graduate or a liberally educated technical graduate. It's a good way to encapsulate this both and kind of value proposition I talked about. Another point I want to drive home is the transition from the notion of purely scarcity around a particular knowledge domain to a learning economy in which we have no idea what your job might be a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. But we know that the winners will be people who can upskill and learn and adapt, be dynamic, and move on time. And increasingly, there'll be a premium on folks who can demonstrate constant skill and information acquisition, transcending traditional academic silos, and be able to network effectively over time. Often this is called a T-shaped employee, meaning that you would graduate with a broad T-top, meaning universal kind of leadership or professional competencies, but also deep mastery of a particular term. That could be a coding language, it could be a dialectic language, a particular domain that you have differentiated ability and it can really show. That's when the employee is valuable. So with that, I want to unveil 10 specific ideas for the answer to the prompt we were given, which is, if you could start a college from scratch, if this were Colin Kaprosky University, what would I do to compete with all the other colleges and universities out there along these lines? How would I try to marry both of these traditions, preparing you for your first job, but also to be a wise, educated person who will be successful in their 10th, 15th, 20th job over time? And you'll notice a lot of overlap, I think, nicely with Dr. Pasquarello's remarks. You don't have to like all of these. Hopefully some of these may be interesting to you. The last thing I'll note is that almost all of these are true somewhere on some campus in the US, but usually only on a small number of them. So I think system-wide, if we could scale these things strategically, we might begin to answer some of the challenges here. First idea is missions, not disciplines. Ironically, in the academy, we often criticize the notion of training somebody specifically only for one job. But we may be unhelpfully training our future students only for a potential future and graduate pursuit in our own discipline, right? Which is a very narrow pursuit. Very few political science majors at most universities will go on to political science graduate school, and so on in many disciplines. So if we were to put the problems or the missions or the topics first in the foreground, not necessarily the disciplines, I think we might train students much better, at least in the undergraduate sphere, for their future. Now this also can have manifestations in gen ed. Right? Many faculty administrators complain, students complain, that general education is a buffet of courses that allow you to taste a lot of the disciplines, think like a philosopher, think like a psychologist, think like a historian, but they're often not tied together in any meaningful way. I just need to get through my first 60 credits so I can get onto the good stuff that I need for my major. If we were to put the problems first, whether that's sustainability, racial inequities, solving the water crisis, urban planning, you can't just take one disciplinary approach to solving those. We might reorganize the curriculum so you're putting the problem first. Second, not just focusing on critical thinking, so the ability to problematize, pick something apart, find holes in my argument, which I'm sure many of you are doing as we speak, but also to come up with the solutions to problems at the same time. Very few employers want to hire a new employee just to criticize what they do. I spoke to one college president who said in every interview he gives, he says, I'm very familiar with all the problems in higher ed. I'm paying you to bring solutions to my campus. Now, I'm as critical and cynical, you might say, as they come, but I recognize this sort of dialectic that can happen in undergraduate education. And I think at Colin Kaprosky University, we would be emphasizing both of these in tandem. Third is, if there's one topic I think maybe doesn't get enough coverage but will become maybe more important than we want it to be societally, is artificial intelligence. Earlier, before AI was really a buzzword, I was a huge advocate of teaching undergraduates how Google ranks results. Because we're increasingly subject to and the prisoners of a global technological set of enterprises, tools at our fingertips that we struggle to understand, but that dictates our reality to us, whether it's social media, our own search for a fact, if such things still exist on the internet. I think being able to work with the robots who will be our overlords or at least our helpers in the future, train graduates who can help design some of these tools actively. But a lot of folks have written books about, as more and more skills, both very blue collar and white collar, become automated, how do you have a resilient set of capabilities as a human to be valuable outside of those systems, those tools, technologies? McKinsey and the World Economic Forum predict that automation will actually create a net jobs gain, meaning that lots of processes that right now are fairly routinized, humans have to do them, they won't be doing them in the future. But you will be sitting above those technologies, designing them, editing them, altering what they do in a meaningful way. So I would emphasize that as a core part of the curriculum. I didn't realize there'd be so many students here, so I regret this one. There is research that actually shows that when students have some amount of work, whether that's a work study on campus or an internship, a co-op, an externship, it has a really positive impact on their overall college experience, on their likelihood to graduate, on their time to graduation, and on their post-graduation outcomes. Most employers, and I am one of them, can tell you I'm looking even more at what you did work-wise during your 4 years in college as I am at your major. Your selection of your major has never mattered less than it does today in terms of whether we will screen you in or out. We're looking for how you can articulate what you do, and often it's the translation of what you've learned to some kind of practical experience outside the classroom that can really be effective. Fifth, in addition to working, and maybe this would be part of the working, is I think you should all be teaching. This is actually the way that Harvard started out, where a first-year student would ace their algebra class, and then as a second-year student, they would become a TA or a tutor to students who might be struggling in that first-year course. If you're familiar with Bloom's taxonomy of learning, you'll know that being able to teach a concept is one of the highest levels you can get to in truly showing that you've mastered it or understand it. So I think we should actually be leveraging and employing undergraduate students in doing a lot of teaching of those who are coming after them. Sixth is when you graduate at many campuses, and this was true for me, the main contact I get from my alma mater is a request for money. I haven't been asked to sit on my academic department's advisory board. I don't know if they have an alumni advisory board. I don't know if they're tracking what I did with my career. And that means that in my case, the music faculty at USC, hopefully none of them are there, probably still are thinking, well, everybody generally probably goes into music, right? There's an opportunity here for every academic department to be in very close touch with its recent graduates and be engaging them about how they might amend, improve, alter their curriculum to improve the experience for their current undergraduates. And guess what? If you engage those students, or former students from age 20 to 35 this way, I bet they're more likely to give money later on than if that's been the only contact. So I think that's a hugely under-leveraged resource on those campuses. Seventh, what if faculty have internships? They often have sabbaticals, or many of them have placements in the community already. Many faculty are clinical faculty in places like business, law, engineering, nursing. But what if that time was used to really place faculty for a period of time out in community organizations, both as learners and as teachers, as workers at those organizations, to then bring back what they've learned from that into the curriculum, kind of stay relevant in their fields and really engage in what they're studying. Eighth, Dr. Pascarella talked about this a little bit, the notion that very few employers will look at a college transcript. We can see your grades, your GPA, maybe some honors that you graduated with, but we still run into that challenge of a graduate who can't precisely articulate or compellingly articulate a narrative about what they can bring to you by virtue of their English degree or the fact that they studied abroad in Italy. If there's a way to embed kind of repeated competency badging, and I hate to use badging because it's such a buzzword, but a way to remind students throughout the curriculum of the particular skills they're getting, not just the grades they're getting over time in the GPA. They'll be much better equipped to tell that story when they're giving an elevator pitch to a potential employer. Ninth is the notion of capstone projects, and a few universities do this really well. What's really rare is a capstone project that might happen around 60 credits or halfway through a college degree. If you were to build a narrative around general education the first 2 years, and let's say you're working on sustainability or environmental responses or consequences of climate change, you might bring various disciplines you've experimented with or been exposed to together in a capstone project that allows you to demonstrate you've learned a lot and connected those various disciplines at the end of those 60 credits. You might then have a senior level or 120 credit level capstone project that might involve leadership, project design, work on a team that's more substantive than any one assignment you might have in a classroom. And that again is a reaffirmation of the synthesis you need between the disciplines, not just a signification of the grades you've done within the disciplines. And finally, 10th, I think it's ridiculous that we think that 4 years on a college campus is all the education or training you might need for your career. We are not going back to that kind of economy, I don't think. Many statistics predict that you'll have 30 or 40 different jobs over your lifetime, maybe 7 or 8 different fundamental careers. So you should be signing a social contract with your university or college of choice to reconnect with them when you think about changing careers, when you think about skills that you need so you don't become obsolete in your field. And it should really be a true lifelong learning experience. far beyond just saying, hey, come and audit some of our online courses, or if you want, there's kind of an adult enrichment program. And we could start messaging that to students when they arrive on campus. You could graduate in some way, but we want you to really be a lifetime partner in our academic community. Only a few minutes left, so a couple of final thoughts. One is a kind of reminder of longitudinal goals, because I find that often a defense of the liberal arts concedes a point we shouldn't concede, which is that because we can only measure salary numerically, that's the only benchmark we ought to be looking at, comparing different majors to one another. A great concept, a Japanese concept called ikigai, which translates to a reason for being, I find very useful in thinking about career alignment. Checking all these boxes is very difficult, but if you can, I would argue you'd be much happier, more fulfilled in your work. So the intersection of what you naturally love to do, what you're actually good at, what someone will actually pay you for, and what the world actually needs, right? So, I love playing jazz music. I was pretty good at it. Some of the other circles didn't line up as well for me as a potential professional musician. Conversely, I could have tried to join a hedge fund and gone into finance in Manhattan, but I wouldn't be very good at it, and I certainly don't think that I would love it. So I think encouraging students and building a curriculum and coaching them to routinely ask this question and answer it for themselves is a good way to think about and reverse engineer the curriculum. Two more slides. One is to note it's an interesting study called the Gallup Purdue Index, and I'm sure you've seen this, Dr. Pasquarella. It was a study done of 40,000 American graduates of higher education, a broad institutional mix. So we're talking access-focused institutions, Ivy League institutions, and so on. And a broad age mix, so anywhere from 25 years old up to 85 years old answering these questions. They were doing a regression analysis. They were trying to find what were the college experiences that correlated most tightly with being engaged at work later on in your life, to try to uncover what it is that universities should be trying to replicate. There's some good news, bad news here. The good news is it really isn't that complicated or expensive to pull off the most high-impact experiences. I had at least one professor who made me excited about learning, was the top one. I had professors who cared about me as a person. I had mentors that encouraged me to pursue my goals. I worked on a big, thorny project that took me more than a semester. I had an internship or job that required me to apply something I learned in the classroom, outside of the classroom, or I was extremely active in extracurricular activities and organizations. So good news, this is already what we thought mattered in higher ed. This is the bad news, is that a full quarter of the survey respondents said that they had none of these experiences. And these aren't students who dropped out. These are people who spent 4 to 6 years at a college and university. Now, even if we tried to litigate this and argue it with one of those and say, hey, I mentored you, I believed in you, the fact that they're not remembering that, that's what matters. Not that you thought you did it, right, at a college and university. 3% agreed they had all 6 of these. And I think that's embarrassing. Now, this is Hofstra data, but it is American higher ed data, and it's something that I think should really challenge us. There's a logical fallacy called the availability heuristic. So if you're a mentor, you remember the students you mentored because they were in your office. You don't remember all the students you never saw, right? And so there's a huge statistical anomaly here in that some students, often the high flyers, are those who are being helicopter parented or encouraged. They go to the undergraduate, they get involved in internships, study abroad, undergraduate research, faculty office hours. But a lot never really make it in to those office hours. We have to scale some of these efforts so they reach many more students, knowing that this matters. And then final slide, and I'll shut up. You may remember MOOCs, massive open online courses. If you're following higher education in 2011, 2012, everyone thought this was going to fundamentally change the sector, put everyone out of business. Once MIT and Princeton, Harvard make all the courses available for free online, why would you go to a traditional college or university? Why would you pay for that? What was interesting, and this is a quote from Sebastian Thrun, who's one of the founders of the MOOC movement. He's an artificial intelligence specialist, was at Stanford, founder of Udacity, he's a MOOC provider. He rediscovered what I've called Baumol's cost disease. It's a labor economy term that means in certain areas of the economy, technology doesn't enhance productivity over time. even as the cost of producing the thing goes up and up. So a string quartet can only play a song so fast, and it just gets more expensive to pay the string quartet over time. That's the economic principle. Education is often thought to be subject to a cost disease. In other words, a class can only get so big, a professor can only reach so many students in so many ways. This is something I think we've rediscovered in the wake of the MOOC movement. And this quote is essentially, after he had attempted to put colleges and universities out of business with these free, high production online courses, he says, what we've learned is that a computer program alone is not likely to be a good educational medium for large numbers of people, except for the truly highly self-motivated, or autodidacts, you might say. To be successful in education, we need, quote, people on the ground to do things, to provide educational services. And what does that sound like, right? So we're coming back to kind of where we started, which is a lengthy, arduous, difficult, but transformative process that happens at this age at a college or university. So none of what I mentioned can be done easily, cheaply, instantly, just through technology, at least as it stands right now. It will involve a lot of investment, a lot of hard work, but I think it'll pay off in the end. So that's what I have. Thank you.
Please join me in thanking our colleagues again at the board. When Dean Siegel and I put this program together, we began with the premise that we wanted to bring in experts because, let's be honest, there are very few of us in this room who are experts in student success. We needed folks who had thought deeply about that. But everybody in this room is an expert at being a Hofstra something, a Hofstra student, a Hofstra professor, or a Hofstra administrator. And we want to leverage that expertise and ask that now that we've been to the heights, we've seen both the ideal goals that AEC and you suggest, and we've been to Kaprosky University. Let's see if we can take 30 minutes and ask ourselves a very concrete question. What should we be doing here at Hofstra to make real some of the kinds of things, the goals that they have imagined for us? What is it about our Hofstra experience that already reinforces some of these things, and where do we start to fall short? And talk about that among yourselves, take notes, and we will bring that information forward to, as I said, the other students, professors, deans, our provost, and our president. Okay, so we have about 30 minutes. Please begin.
I have to. So I was looking at the Hofstra was one of them, so I got more. And I do. But then I can see what individuals and they can be wow, this is such a good opportunity in general, like I'm not sure during school and after school, and
time for the session is coming to an end. I think it's just about all over except for the thank yous. I want to begin by thanking our two speakers again, Colin Kaprosky. I'd also like to thank my colleagues who agreed to serve as facilitators. We have 20 faculty here serving as facilitators, 10 from the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences and 10 from the professional schools. Thank you very much for your time. I'd also like to thank, Lauren and I would like to thank our fellow deans for helping us bring those people to the table and contributing to the organization of this today, which I think really affects the entire university. I think I should thank the provost also and the president for good form. And I want to thank everyone else who agreed to come and participate in a very timely and important conversation. As Warren said before, the fruit of these discussions is going to be gathered together and shared with the provost, the president, and with other faculty. So if I could just ask that the faculty facilitators take your notes. If you want, you can give them to me or give them to Warren now. If you would rather take them home and edit them, clean them up into some more presentable form, you can email them to us both whenever you're ready. So again, thank you very much.